Cain Dingle, Jeff Hordley, has been left furious in Emmerdale after a serious confession from sister-in-law Ruby Milligan, Beth Cordingley. As we know, Cain's wife Moira, Natalie J. Robb, has been wrongly imprisoned for manslaughter after 2 bodies were found on Butler's farm. The first body found was enslaved Anya Barisha, Olia al-Shabibi, who passed away following the foul treatment she received from Ray Walters, Joe Absalom, and Celia Daniels, Jay Griffiths. In a shocking twist, the second corpse was Celia herself. Ruby discovered the shallow graves while seeking answers about Anya's death. The two had struck up a friendship last year when she was found sleeping in one of Caleb's, William Ash, work vans. Spooked by the sight of the disturbed soil, she alerted authorities, unaware of the implications this would have for Moira. In today's episode, the Milligans popped round to Butler's to see how Cain was getting on. Ruby commented that the farmhouse kitchen was a mess, and he abruptly snapped back. She was overcome with guilt, and finally admitted that she was the one who called the police to tell them about Anya's body. Cain was enraged, accusing Ruby and Caleb of betraying the family and effectively throwing poor Moira under the bus. He said they should have come to him first, as ultimately their decision just made Moira look more guilty. Cain also came to the conclusion that Caleb only offered to pay for her lawyer because he was guilty, and ordered them to leave. Will he divulge this information to an already troubled Moira? And will she ever walk free? At the center of it all stood Cain Dingle, jaw clenched, shoulders tight, fury simmering just beneath the surface. His wife, Moira Dingle, was behind bars, and nothing in that kitchen. Not the mess, not the silence, not the cold, compared to the storm inside him. A prison sentence built on lies. Moira's imprisonment had shaken the entire village. Accused of manslaughter after 2 bodies were unearthed on her land, she now sat in a prison cell awaiting a fate she didn't deserve. The first body discovered was Anya Barisha, a young woman whose tragic story had already horrified the village. Anya had been enslaved, abused, and exploited by Ray Walters and his accomplice Celia Daniels. Anya's death was the result of cruel treatment. A life diminished long before it ended. But the shock didn't stop there. When authorities dug deeper into the soil at Butler's farm, they uncovered a second corpse. Celia Daniels herself. 2 bodies. 1 farm. 1 woman accused. Moira. Ruby's discovery. The chain of events that led to Moira's arrest began with Ruby Milligan. Months earlier, Ruby had befriended Anya after discovering her sleeping in one of Caleb Milligan's work vans. Anya had been frightened, withdrawn, clearly hiding from something. Ruby had sensed something wasn't right. She never imagined it would lead to this. When Ruby later stumbled upon disturbed soil on the farm, something deep in her gut told her it was connected. Fear gnawed at her. The memory of Anya's vulnerability haunted her thoughts. So she called the police. She hadn't meant to destroy Moira's life. She hadn't even considered that Moira might be implicated. But intention meant nothing now. A visit to Butler's. In today's episode of Emmerdale, Ruby and Caleb made their way to Butler's farm. The air between them was thick with tension even before they stepped inside. Caleb tried to appear composed. Ruby, however, looked like she hadn't slept in days. They found Cain in the kitchen, pacing. Ruby's eyes darted around the room. "The kitchen's a mess," she commented awkwardly, attempting lightness. Cain snapped. "Really? That what you came here to say?" The words were sharp, cutting through the air like broken glass. Ruby flinched. The confession guilt has a way of demanding release. Ruby's hands trembled as she spoke. "It was me," she admitted quietly. "I called the police. About Anya." The silence that followed was suffocating. Cain's face drained of color, then flushed with rage. "You what?" Caleb stepped forward, but Cain's glare stopped him cold. "You went to the police?" Cain's voice rose. "You didn't think to come to me first?" Ruby tried to explain. She had been scared. She thought it was the right thing. She didn't realize. "You didn't realize?" Cain barked. "You've just thrown my wife under the bus." Betrayal to Cain. This wasn't a mistake. It was betrayal. Family should protect family. That's the Dingle code. Ruby and Caleb had broken it. Cain accused them of turning their backs when it mattered most. "If you'd come to me," he growled, "we could have sorted it. Instead you make her look guilty." Caleb attempted reason. "Moira's innocent," he insisted. "The truth will come out." But Cain wasn't listening. All he could see was Moira sitting alone in a prison cell, because of them. The lawyer questioned as tempers flared. Cain's mind began connecting dots. Caleb had offered to pay for Moira's lawyer. At the time, it seemed generous. Now, suspicious. "You only offered because you're guilty," Cain accused. Caleb bristled. "That's not fair. Isn't it?" Cain shot back. "You knew. That's why you're trying to fix it." Ruby shook her head desperately. No, Cain. I swear. But trust, once cracked, doesn't mend easily. The order to leave Cain's patience snapped. Get out, he said coldly. Ruby's eyes filled with tears. Caleb lingered for a moment, as though wanting to say something that could undo the damage. There was nothing. They left. The door slammed behind them. Cain stood alone in the wreckage of his kitchen, and his faith in family. Moira in prison meanwhile, inside cold prison walls. Moira remained unaware of the confession. Her days blurred together, meals eaten in silence. Sleepless nights replaying every moment that led here. The weight of injustice pressing down on her chest. She trusted Cain to fight for her. But would he tell her the truth about Ruby? Would revealing it help, or destroy what little hope she had? The shadow of Onya's death continued to cast a long shadow over the village. She had been failed by so many. By Ray. By Celia. By those who didn't look closely enough. Her story demanded justice. But justice for Onya had somehow twisted into punishment for Moira. The irony was unbearable. Cain's dilemma. Cain paced the farmhouse long after Ruby and Caleb left. Anger battled with strategy. If he told Moira about Ruby's confession, would it crush her? Or would it give her a thread to pull at? Something that could unravel the case. Moira already carried enough guilt. Not for the crime, but for being the one accused. Could she handle knowing a family member had inadvertently sealed her fate? Caleb's conflict back at home. Caleb faced his own storm. He understood why Ruby called the police. He even agreed with her. Onya deserved justice, but he hadn't foreseen the consequences. Now, Moira's imprisonment threatened to tear the entire family apart. He replayed Cain's words in his head. You've betrayed us. Was he right? Ruby's guilt. Ruby sat alone, haunted. She had followed her conscience. And yet the outcome felt catastrophic. Onya's body had needed to be found. But not like this. Not at Moira's expense. Her friendship with Onya had been genuine. She remembered the fragile smile, the tentative trust. She would do it again, she knew that. But that knowledge didn't ease the guilt. The bigger question: the case against Moira wasn't airtight. There were inconsistencies. Celia's death raised more questions than answers. How had two bodies ended up buried on her land without her knowledge? Who else had access? Who was protecting themselves by staying silent? Cain began to wonder whether Ruby's call had only exposed a fragment of a much larger truth. Will Moira walk free? As night fell over Butler's farm, Cain finally sat down. The kitchen was still a mess, but something inside him had shifted. Rage alone wouldn't save Moira. He needed clarity. Strategy. Patience. If Ruby's confession could reveal cracks in the prosecution's case, perhaps it wasn't purely destructive. Perhaps it could become leverage. But trust within the family, that might take far longer to repair. What comes next? Will Cain tell Moira that Ruby called the police? Will Moira understand, or feel betrayed? Will Caleb's offer to fund her defense become the key to proving her innocence? And most importantly, will the truth about Ray and Celia finally come to light? In Emmerdale, secrets rarely stay buried. Not in shallow graves. Not in broken families. Not in furious hearts. The village braces for the fallout. One thing is certain. Cain Dingle will not stop fighting.